Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, and in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be discussing, as well as analysing tech news, which as usual, has popped up in the past 24 or so hours. Hopefully, you're having an amazing day. We have lots of stuff to get through in this video. I want to start things out, though, with AMD, because Zen 3 is looking great in the labs, and it is going to launch later this year. This has been reaffirmed by AMD's Lisa Su in an official video that the company have plonked onto their YouTube channel. I'll of course link it in the video description. And this is all in celebration of 7/7, which is a year to the day that the Ryzen 3000 series, powered by Zen 2, and the RX 5000 series, powered by the first generation Navi/RDNA 1, launched. We also have a series of reviews for the 3000 XT series, which is basically a refresh with slightly improved clock frequencies and slightly better boost behavior as well. But really, the focus I want to put on here is how AMD have just transformed themselves over the past few years. And honestly, when I first leaked the fact that the Ryzen 3000 series and RX 5000 series were going to launch on the 7th of July last year, I remember thinking that I was very hopeful for the performance of the CPUs. Obviously, there was a lot of hype for the IPC gains and all that stuff, and I also leaked a lot of the information for Zen 2, so I was really hyped to see what we would see for that and the first generation of RDNA. But now that we actually have the products and we've had like a year to kind of digest them and see how they've fitted into the marketplace, I can honestly say that while I am still very impressed with the performance of the CPUs, obviously the 3950X launched a bit later, but the 3700, the 3900, all of those CPUs were just, awesome. I think perhaps one of the biggest achievements that AMD made was the gambles that they did on the technology. For example, the chiplet design, the fact that they shifted to 7nm, and perhaps one of the more difficult things was juggling the release of the products. So both Ryzen 3000 series as well as the RX 5000 series launched simultaneously. I think Zen 3 is going to be a pretty big improvement over Zen 2. I don't think that it's going to be a small incremental shift in performance, but I think for now AMD want to celebrate Zen 2 and what is brought to the table. I am actually really hyped for the technology that's releasing in the next 12 to 18 months on both the PC and console front. I've said many times that I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Rocket Lake and future Intel architectures can bring to the table, and I'm really excited to see what the next generation of NVIDIA GPUs, we'll talk about those more in a moment, is going to kind of bring to PC gaming. But given the second generation of RDNA is also going to be pretty big, I think this is going to be an amazing year for us. But then obviously next year is going to continue with a lot of awesome tech. And I think when Intel start bringing out their discrete GPUs as well, I think we're all going to be in for a treat, especially as developers start to get hold of this technology and start to understand how to best leverage it. Anyway, enough of that. Let's move over to the next piece of news, and that is actually a kind of bad piece of news for AMD. Apple will be parting ways with AMD when it comes to their discrete GPU solutions. And this has been a report floating around the internet over the past day or so, thanks to Apple removing AMD GPU support for the macOS ARM64. And it seems like Apple will be utilizing their own custom GPUs. And of course, Apple's phones, for example, do use their own custom GPU hardware. Apple actually transitioned from Imagination Technologies, who were offering Power VR solutions, and also recently Apple made the news because they were giving Intel the punt to produce their own CPUs once again for the Macs. So this is going to be very interesting if we see Apple do once again the same for AMD. Recently, AMD have been producing quite a lot of custom silicon, or at least tweaked silicon, for Apple. And this has included even a recent leak that I covered just recently that Apple are going to be receiving Navi 31 silicon. So no, we're not talking about 21. There's even Apple planning to use 31, which of course is part of RDNA 3. And naturally, there's Navi 22, 21 and 23, which allegedly will also, at least one or two SKUs will be used for Apple too. So this is going to be a very different approach for Apple compared to what they've done in the past. Apple actually started their relationship with AMD for a couple of reasons, but one of which being that their relationship with Nvidia soured quite considerably. And so for Apple to do this, it would be quite a difference. And you can see yourself the Apple Mac Silicon on screen, which of course a Twitter user by the name of Longhorn has posted. And it's quite interesting as well, because in this particular image, they state that the Intel-based Mac, which uses either Intel's own iGPUs, NVIDIA, or AMD GPUs, supports immediate mode rendering, whereas the Apple Silicon supports tile-based deferred rendering, which is kind of interesting because, well, Apple, Nvidia, and Intel can also use tile-based deferred rendering as well, so that's kind of curious. But long story short, it's going to be a big customer which AMD lose, assuming that this is true. And next up, we have RTX 30 series. Some further rumours for the specifications of the 70 Ti and the RTX 3070 Vanilla. And this, once again, is thanks to Kopity7Kimi on Twitter. Just as a quick reminder, they've actually had a pretty good track record when it comes to NVIDIA stuff previously. They even got a couple of the Ampere flagship models for HPC as accurate in terms of specifications, so I will give them the benefit of the doubt. But with that said, naming schemes and specs can change at basically the last moment. With this said though, the 3070 Ti will be utilising GA104 silicon, and it appears that we're going to be seeing 8GB of GDDR6 memory, or 6X memory as it's being referred to here, with 3072 CUDA cores. And then the 3070 Vanilla, they're stating it's only got GDDR6, so we can either assume it's slower clocked at GDDR6, as GDDR6X has not been officially confirmed anywhere. So I assume it just means higher clocked models, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Either way, there is also fewer CUDA cores enabled, as you would expect, and it's cut from 3072 to just 2944. We can also assume that the 3070 is probably going to be the GPU that a lot of folks are going to want to purchase. It's probably going to be the sweet spot in terms of price to performance. Hopefully the 3070 Ti isn't that much more expensive. The rumour has it that GA103 is nuked, it's been cancelled, and instead GA102 is what the RTX 3080 and 3090 or 3080 Ti, the naming scheme's a bit up in the air right now, that's what it will be using. So the next step down, of course, it makes sense that GA104 is what we will be seeing the 3070 class cards utilise as well. And also, according to Kopity7Kimi, the lower end SKUs, such as the 3060, will be using the further cut down GA106 silicon. One of the persistent rumours we're hearing with Ampere is that every single card in the lineup, even the lower end SKUs, will perform much better with hardware-based ray tracing, and every single one of them will also support hardware-based ray tracing. So whether this means that we won't have another like GTX 16 series type of thing, or whether maybe Nvidia for the shorter term, let's say for the first 6 or so months of Ampere's launch, will keep the 16 series as like the cheaper entry-level cards. But I suspect that Ampere itself won't be cut down to actually have a non-ray tracing / DLSS variant. I think that Nvidia are preparing themselves to take on the feature set of the next generation consoles, and quite honestly too, I definitely feel that they are taking a lot of pressure in terms of PR right now from what AMD are doing with the second generation of RDNA. And now to some console related stuff. The rumour has it that Sony are holding back both first and third party games for August, which is when their next event, the next PlayStation State of Play, will be taking place. And there are very persistent rumours for what Sony have been working on, including a new Silent Hill. Now, I am very confident that both Sony and Microsoft have a ton of games that they are not ready to announce yet. And I think, honestly, at this point, both companies, to a degree, are playing tit for tat. Neither want to show all of their cards on the table. Indeed, there is a lot of rumours for Microsoft, the first of which is that Cyberpunk 2077 could actually be coming shortly after it is officially released to the Xbox Game Pass, which would be an absolute massive thing for Microsoft. Yes, it's not an exclusive exactly, it's not like an exclusive title, but it would mean that I suspect Microsoft would get a ton of subscribers for Xbox Game Pass. But by far the biggest piece of Microsoft news at the moment, and please do not take this as confirmation, is that Microsoft allegedly will be purchasing Warner Brothers Interactive. Warner Brothers Interactive are, well, big as a publisher. They have a ton of different companies: Avalanche Software, Monolith Productions, NetherRealm, Rocksteady, TT Games, WB Games Boston, Montreal, blah 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 blah, Portkey Games. Allegedly, there are other companies that are in the running to purchase WB Interactive, and those do include companies such as Take-Two and Electronic Arts. But apparently the company who have shown thus far the most interest is Microsoft, and they are rumoured to have already bid $4 billion, I'm just going to repeat that figure, $4 billion US dollars, which is not a small amount of change, as I'm sure you'll agree. Just so that we're clear, this is not the same thing as them purchasing the entirety of Warner Brothers. So this does not mean that if Microsoft bought this, they would suddenly have access to be able to create their own Batman comics, just for sake of argument, at least according to how we are perceiving these rumours, although, of course, A, this may not be true, B, we don't know the full details of what's going on here. For all we know, maybe they will have some type of exclusivity with Batman games, or Superman games, or whatever, or perhaps there will be some type of timed exclusive, or maybe it will only happen for certain franchises or whatever, we don't know. But I would probably say that games would be a separate thing to, let's say, the comics and other properties that Warner Brothers own. Either way though, if you actually analyse this just from the perspective of, say, having access to Mortal Kombat, it's extremely interesting. Now, I will say that I am actually a really big fan of the older Mortal Kombat games. I played them extensively back in the day, and I was really quite young at the time. Probably shouldn't have been playing Mortal Kombat, but whatever. And I absolutely loved the lore around Mortal Kombat 1 and Mortal Kombat 2 and Mortal Kombat 3. And to be honest with you, MK1 was even a little old when I was playing it, as was 2. But still, the lore around Mortal Kombat and the sheer complexity, of the universe actually could be very interesting, because don't forget that we've seen some of the NetherRealm team actually state that they would like to do some type of tie-up with Killer Instinct, but obviously that game would need to be exclusive to the Microsoft platform, which would mean that this was possible. But also, this would work in many different ways. Imagine, for example, having... this is just throwing examples out. I just want to make it very clear this is not a leak, but they could even have, say, Gears of War where the Locusts invade the Mortal Kombat realm or something like that, and Marcus and his team get pulled through the same portal because of things that their elder gods have been doing or whatever. You know, you could make up whatever zaniness you want, and that could be really interesting. You know, it could be absolutely crazy, especially because technically speaking, you've of course had like a couple, I believe it was one or two of the Gears of War characters in Killer Instinct, so you could do some really cool stuff there. But also the team of developers have been really just stellar. And I will say that the only issue with some of these purchases is that if you would not have access to the Batman licenses with something like Rocksteady, who of course have made some of the absolutely amazing Arkham games, they would basically need to kind of craft their own like new stories or whatever. But it's hard to imagine that such a talented team of developers couldn't do that. Do I think it's true? Well, I wouldn't be surprised if at the very least Microsoft are inquiring. It could be that Microsoft doesn't get them. I mean, companies such as Take-Two are also very much a good contender to purchase this. Hell, Sony could end up buying them, or Nintendo for all we know. And I think for Microsoft, it would also make a ton of sense because it would give them access to quite a few IPs, but it would also give them access to a really, really, really large a pool of talented developers. But let me know your thoughts on this one. With all of that said, though, I'm going to let you go. Take care of yourselves. Bye for now.